Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. It is now officially the offseason. There are no more football games for quite some time. And that means we need to start talking to all these new coaches who are familiar faces in new places. And one guy, he's a familiar face. He's actually in a familiar place for him. Shane Beamer, the new head coach at the University of South Carolina. And Coach, we had some technical issues right off the bat. We were going to be on a virtual official visit according to your background on your Zoom call. So how would I do a virtual official visit at the University of South Carolina?
Well, you jump on like this and we would try and show you everything that you would see on a regular visit just over Zoom. So we try and, spotlight as much as we could. So we'd get you logged on with you and your family and try and show you in a short window everything that we have to offer academically and athletically and in Columbia as well, and try and keep it upbeat and entertaining and have you leaving the visit feeling better about South Carolina than when you went on it.
Now, you have obviously offered visits to South Carolina before. You were an assistant there before. You've worked at Virginia Tech. You've worked at Georgia. You've worked at Oklahoma. You've done a lot of these things, recruited a lot of guys. What is it like trying to recruit someone entirely virtually like you have for the last year?
Yeah, it's been, like anything, if somebody told me a year ago that this is how we would be doing it, I would have thought they were crazy and wondered how you're doing it. And it's tough because you certainly miss the being able to sit down with them in person. And, coming from a place like Oklahoma, it was really crazy because we recruited so much nationally at Oklahoma that so many of those guys that signed with Oklahoma back in December, the first time they were in Norman, Oklahoma was the day they arrived for class last month or in the summertime when they come. So it's just a different way of doing things. And it's been good that you can jump on these and have multiple coaches on there and talk to players, but it's definitely, you miss being able to get a guy on campus and show them how beautiful the campus is at South Carolina. You miss having them being able to just sit down with guys in your office and talk. So that part has been tough, but we've gotten used to it. And like any other program in college football right now, you're trying to find ways to be creative and separate yourself from your competitors when it comes to these, because this is certainly the name of the game right now. And we don't want to be just cookie cutter in exactly what we're doing. We're trying to make them, when they walk out of this visit, they say, man, that was really cool and different.
So here's my question, because we see a lot of first year head coaches, they come in and you see them on Twitter immediately. This is the greatest town in America, greatest campus in America. And they're faking it because they'd never set foot on that campus before they got that job. And they're never leaving their office or leaving their house in this case. And with you've actually been at the University of South Carolina before. You've coached with Steve Spurrier's staff and some of South Carolina's most successful seasons. What is having that knowledge? And by the way, given your gleaming new facility, the ability to say, you should have seen what it looked like before when you are on these virtual visits.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It excites me because the resources that are here now compared to when I was here 10 years ago are like night and day, and the leadership here on campus with our President Caslin and Ray Tanner, our athletic director. We got great leadership at the top. The facility you're talking about that I'm sitting in right now. I mean, my wife's on me because I'm doing this interview in my office, and she's probably mad because the office still isn't like decorated behind me with the way it's going to be. But it's a beautiful facility. It's as good as anywhere in the country. I've been all over the SEC and ACC and Big 12 and seen different facilities, and I haven't found one that's better than this one. I mean, to have everything right here together and to look out my office window right there and have Williams-Brice Stadium across the street, it's amazing. But you're right. I know the people. I know the city. I know the campus, and when I say it's a great city to live in, I know that because I did it for 4 years. When I say it's a beautiful campus, I know that. I mean, one of the pictures here in my office is of my daughters and I when they were first born. We took a picture on the horseshoe right there in the middle of South Carolina's campus. So I've been there and I know it and I've seen it, and it is a special place to us in a lot of ways. And I hope when people hear me and see me talk about it, they see the realness and the genuineness that I feel about this place come out.
So tell your wife that you have the most important thing up, although we got to move your camera a little bit to make sure people see it. It's that garnet helmet. I see the black one and I see the white one, and I realize George Rogers wore a white one.
Yeah.
But that garnet helmet, that's right. The garnet helmet that Steve Tannehill and Brandon Bennett and Sterling Sharp wore, that's the helmet. Chris Rumpf, that's the helmet I want to see.
There's a lot of great ones. Trust me.
I was born about 2 miles from where you're sitting right now.
That's awesome. That is phenomenal, actually. So it is a great one. Some of my earliest memories were, and I've said it before, was coming down here when my dad first got the job at Virginia Tech, and coming down here in the late 80s, and Todd Ellis and Robert Brooks and Sterling Sharp and those guys like you're talking about were out there playing, and they were wearing those helmets for sure. It definitely caught my eye. It's amazing how many, from the day I got the job, we got the greatest fan base in the world, but how many of them I've heard from when it's just strictly about the uniforms, what to wear, what not to wear. I feel like that's the most pressing matter right now, which I love their passion.
Fire ants people, you got your black magic people. This is very important stuff. But no, I wanted to talk to you about this because, you talk about going and seeing Todd Ellis and being around the program in that era. So this was pre-success, and you were there for the program's greatest era of success. And I remember going and talking to Coach Spurrier when they'd beaten Clemson 5 times in a row, and they were riding really high and they were rolling, and it was something that South Carolina had never seen before. You helped get it there. How did you guys get it to that point, and how is it possible to get back to that point?
Yeah, it was first of all, from a recruiting standpoint, we did a great job of just keeping the very best players in South Carolina at home. And let's be real. I mean, that was a pretty special time of just talent that was coming out of this state.
Alshon, Jeffery, Jadeveon Clowney, Marcus Lattimore. I mean, it's very good bunch of players.
DJ Swearinger, Alshon, Stephon, Gilmore. I mean, and not just the guys that came to South Carolina. I mean, during that same time, Robert Quinn came out of Charleston and went to North Carolina. AJ Green came out of Somerville and went to Georgia.
Carlos Dunlap went to Florida. There's a lot of talent in the state. Yeah,
no doubt. So, I mean, it was an amazing time for football in this state, but it's great high school football in this state. So the one thing that we did then that we'll definitely do now is certainly from a recruiting standpoint, start in South Carolina. We sold those guys, and it was easy to see that if you kept the best players at home, you have a chance to win big at South Carolina. And that's certainly what we did. There was Alshon, and then the next year, Marcus Lattimore, that was his class. And Marcus saw Alshon stay in state the year before with Stephon and those guys. And then Marcus stayed in state. Then Jadeveon could have gone.
Alshon, I know you weren't involved in this part of the recruitment. This was another coach at another school, but Alshon's not pumping gas and has never professionally pumped gas, right? He's still making a lot of money playing football. Last I heard,
he is making a lot of money. Saw him here a couple of weeks ago and spent some time with him, and he's certainly not doing that. That's for sure. So just finding those guys, keeping them in state, but then also you got to do a great job of. It's a state where you've got Greenville and Spartanburg in the upstate. You got Columbia, you got Charleston, but there's a lot of Myrtle Beach in that area. But there's a lot of rural areas in South Carolina that probably aren't recruited. There's not a lot of traffic, so being able to get in there and find those guys that slip through the cracks. I mean, I remember just watching the Super Bowl the other night and seeing a guy like Bashad Breeland. I remember going to Bashad Breeland's basketball game when he was coming out of high school in Allendale, South Carolina, that probably not a lot of people were recruiting from, and being able to project. Devin Taylor, I think, is a great example, a guy that we had here before that was a 6'7" triple jumper, I think, in high school, that you saw the athleticism, and you just have to project and think about when you get them in your program, how you develop them. So that's the biggest thing. It's just from a recruiting standpoint, keeping those guys at home, but then also being able to go out.
I give you a close to home one that you may not have thought about because you wouldn't have been involved in his recruitment at all. You were at Oklahoma, but Presley Harvin, the reigning Ray Guy Award winner, who went to Georgia Tech. He's from Florence. Yeah. That's a guy that South Carolina should be all over.
Yeah, no question. If it's a guy in state, if we can keep him in state, and we're going to err on the side of those in-state guys for sure. But then we've also got to be able to, during that time, we went into Georgia and got Connor Shaw, Jared Cook, Went up into North Carolina and got Melvin Ingram. So we've got to be able to attack those surrounding states because, there's a ton of football players in those states as well. And they all can't go to the in-state schools. And particularly with North Carolina, Virginia, D.C., there's a lot of guys.
You're closer to Charlotte than the schools in the Triangle are.
No doubt. No doubt. So, that's what we're telling those guys. You hop on Interstate 77 and you're here in no time. And there's so many guys in the state of North Carolina that want to play SEC football, and we're as close as it gets for them to be able to do that. Same thing with, Virginia, Washington, D.C. You don't realize how close Columbia, South Carolina is to those places. So we're in a great recruiting base, which I'm excited about, to be able to tap into all those areas.
So now it's just a matter of turning, those guys, because you've got to sell a dream right now because you're coming off a record that isn't great. But you did that before. The thing is, when Coach Spurrier took over for Coach Holtz, it was not, they'd had some success, but it was still not the best situation in the world. How did early on you guys sell the program to get those guys, the in-state guys, to say, all right, I'm going to take a chance on this instead of going somewhere else? Yeah,
no, great question, because you're right. My first year at South Carolina, I remember losing our last game of the year to our in-state rival on a last-second field goal that kept us out of a bowl game. And then I remember playing in the Outback Bowl and getting hammered by Iowa early on, in some of those years, and playing in the Papa John's Bowl and losing to UConn. So we were building. And I think those guys just kind of saw that. One, we talked to them about, we're close and you can help us get over the hump, where it's such a thin line between winning and losing. And we won 7 or 8 this year, but you can come in there and help us get to 9, 10, and 11. And they certainly did in those instances. And then I just think that being able to tell a guy that's in this area, that's from the state of South Carolina or a surrounding area in this region, that you can come here and you can accomplish all your goals on and off the field. It's a unbelievable fan base. You've been in Williams-Brice Stadium. You know what it's like in there on Saturdays. It's a great city to live in. It's the capital city of Columbia, but it's a college town. Everything's geared around this university. Unbelievable academics from an academic standpoint. So on and off the field, you come to South Carolina and you can win championships and be set for life. And it's just it's a great place to live and great place to be. And you've got all the resources you need to be successful on and off the field.
So you come in a very different situation. We talked about the virtual official visit, but you come in a situation where, first year coach is still getting used to the early signing period. And it's gotten to the point where that first signing class for a first year coach is pretty tough if you want to go in and sign a bunch of high school guys. You took a different tack this year, which, a lot of people are doing this, but I was very interested in the way you attacked it because yours was a little bit different than some other folks. You went out and you got some transfers, but they weren't all Power 5 to Power 5 transfers. You had some group of 5 guys who'd been really good. I remember we were kicking around the idea of doing a story on Jordan Strawn at Georgia State last year. Led the nation in sacks and just a really good, came as a walk-on safety. And now he's one of the best pass rushers in the country. You've got a couple of guys out of St. Francis University, which I doubt a lot of people have heard of, but it's a quarterback receiver tandem who've been together since middle school. Yeah. And how much does taking guys who are, for lack of a better term, already grown men help when you're trying to jumpstart a program?
A lot, and especially because you nailed it with the early signing period. Like I got hired the week after Thanksgiving. So you're about 2 weeks away, a little over 2 weeks until signing day. I think at the time we had 9 or 10 guys committed at the time. And I sat there and looked at it and I was going to keep all those guys committed and thankful for them staying committed to us. I wasn't going to come in and just start dropping guys left and right. I was going to do the right thing. So we signed those guys. And I certainly could have gone out during those 2 weeks and put together 10 more signees from a high school class and driven up the rankings. But at that point, let's be real. I didn't have a great idea about the personnel on our roster.
You weren't working at Florida or Kentucky, so there wasn't going to be a ton of overlap versus what you were looking at Oklahoma, right?
Exactly. There were some guys here, at Oklahoma and Georgia that I was involved with. Rick Sandage, our defensive lineman, Zach Pickens, Jordan Birch, Boogie Huntley, Jaheim Bell. There's a handful of guys that are on the roster that we were recruiting at those other schools. But for the most part, I didn't really know this roster. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Where do we need to improve depth? At that point, wasn't really sure who was going in the portal, who wasn't going in the portal. At that point, a couple of guys had already pretty much declared for the NFL draft that I knew were gone. So there was a lot of unknowns on my end in regards to the roster. So I said, okay, let's sign these guys that are committed to us in December. And then going forward, we've got a lot of flexibility in regards to scholarships with what we do. For me to, one, get a staff in here that can recruit to their system with what we were going to do, because at that time I didn't have an offensive or I didn't have a defensive coordinator hired.
Right.
And ended up having a different offensive coordinator in the end. So in order to fit the systems and make sure we get the right personnel in to fit those systems, I just felt the best thing was to kind of just take a deep breath, wait, and see where things go. And it gave us pretty much 2 months to attack the signing class. And we went right to work on it. But you're right, to be able to find transfers like that. You mentioned Jordan Strawn. I mean, unbelievable story. And the guy got here a month ago and he's already put on 17 pounds since he got here. I mean, I can't wait to see this guy play this season. And just, the St. Francis guys, you look at them, and Jason and EJ, and you're like, how in the heck did they end up at St. Francis? And no disrespect to St. Francis, but it's like, why are these guys not playing at a higher level? And different guys like that. Amarian Brown that transferred from Georgia Tech tied some of Calvin Johnson's freshman records. And we weren't just going out to find I think we signed 7 transfers, the 7 most talented, big-time Power 5 guys we could. It was, find the guys that fit what we need, what are our needs. And I came in day one, and it was like, here are 3 positions that are immediate needs for us right now. How do we go combat that? Let's find some other guys to complement it. And then we were also able to add some high school and a junior college guy in the meantime as well, where, everybody talks about, every coach on signing day gets up there and says, we filled our needs, we filled our needs. And that's kind of cliche, but we really did in a lot of ways. That we knew what we needed coming into December. We figured that out pretty quickly. And then we targeted, okay, here's the guys that we need to go after, and let's go get them. And we did. So
you mentioned, a situation where you didn't have a defensive coordinator at first. You hired Mike Bobo originally as the offensive coordinator. He then goes to Auburn. So then you hire Marcus Satterfield. How do you kind of figure out what you are offensively now? Do you still need to see them in spring practice before you figure? Because Marcus worked with Matt Rule, and I know those teams at Temple and at Baylor, you couldn't kind of pigeonhole what their offense was. It sort of morphed with the players. Right. So how do you guys figure that out?
Yeah, I think it was important for me with all 3 coordinators, Marcus, Clayton Lloyd, and then Pete Limbo on special teams, to, have some guys that were flexible, had the ability to be multiple, to fit, this, that whatever your offense is, I mean, you better fit it to the strengths of your players and right. be able to adjust. And, with what they did at Baylor and Temple when Marcus was with Matt Rule, but then also you look at what Marcus learned this past season from Joe Brady when he was with the Panthers. I think he'll be the first to tell you he's grown a lot as a coach in the last year. So it didn't take me long to figure out that we had some pretty good depth and physicality and size on the offensive line.
Yeah.
You've got a 1,000-yard rusher coming back in Kevin Harris. You got Marshawn Lloyd and some other running backs that we're really, really excited about. We got a quarterback that's got some athleticism and can run. So we want to build around our strengths and then be able to, bring every position up along with that and continue to improve. Tight end, wide receiver, all of it. So I think we've got an offense that certainly will be flexible from a system standpoint and multiple, but you won't really know until we get out there, for spring practice, particularly with some of the newness of guys that are out here, a new quarterback, 2 new receivers, and let's see, who our best playmakers are, and let's go find a way to get them the ball.
So I remember when your last boss, Lincoln Riley, when he got hired as the OC at Oklahoma, he was joking about every time he went out in public, people would come up to him and say, we run the ball here, right, Coach? I know you're an air raid guy, but we run the ball here. And then, if you've watched Oklahoma's offense at all under Lincoln Riley, they run the ball a ton. They run counter tray within the air raid, which you don't see very often. But, how much did you take from that? Because that offense, depending on who the people were, did change. The Kyler Murray offense was not the Jalen Hurts offense, was not the Spencer Rattler offense.
Yeah, no, exactly right. It's funny you said that. Before I started this with you, I was in meeting with the offensive staff, and we were just talking about how in the 3 years I was at Oklahoma, just how it was different with Kyler, Jalen, and Spencer. and kind of what we did from a schematic standpoint. But that's probably the biggest thing I learned. I learned a lot, but just from an offensive standpoint is how good we were running the football. I still remember when I was deciding between leaving Georgia and going to Oklahoma, making that decision. I'll never forget talking to Mel Tucker, our defensive coordinator at the time, who's at Michigan State, obviously. And we had just played Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl, and I was wrestling with, do I make this move or not? And I remember Mel telling me, he's like, bro, you need to go. Like, what they're doing offensively is on the cutting edge. Like, I've never seen some of the stuff that they do. And once you get into it, Lincoln's so creative. We all know that. But I think the biggest thing is just because we ran the ball so well, it opened up so much more in the passing game off of play action. I mean, so many big plays, it just came off. We were running the ball so well that you're able to hit big plays downfield to, you know, Hollywood Brown or CeeDee Lamb or Marvin Mims and Austin Stogner this year and all that. So just seeing how we were able to run the ball so efficiently and then marry up play action with that and the big plays it created was a great, you know, you knew that, but then to be able to see it within that offense in the Big 12 was pretty eye-opening for me.
Well, it's terrifying. If you're going to gain 6 yards a carry, you're not leaving that extra guy out of the box. You're bringing him down unless your corners are unbelievable. You can't cover everybody. And you know, that's the part I think everybody assumes it's all RPOs and all that, but you did a lot of pure play action there, which isn't that different than what was being run in the 80s and 90s. It's just dressed up differently and run at a little higher tempo. Exactly right. I mean, you nailed it. You know, not to dive in too much to Lincoln and that offense and secrets and things like that, but you're exactly right. I mean, tempo and being able to mix up the tempo, but just the physicality of running the football. And Lincoln would, if he was being honest, would probably tell you, like, he enjoys game planning the run game more than maybe the passing game. And I would argue that we probably did more in the running game. I know we did from a schematic standpoint, running the football, than we did when I was at Georgia. And we had Nick Chubb and Sony Michel my last year, my 2 years there. Well, when you have five-star offensive linemen and Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, you don't have to get too cute.
Exactly. So. You know, and we had really good. I mean, my first year at Oklahoma, all 5 of those offensive linemen are going to end up playing in the NFL once Creed Humphrey gets drafted.
Creed goes, yep.
You know, so we had a dominant offensive line my first year there, and then really good running backs. But you're right, just that ability to run the football in that league, and then throw play action off of it, and then to have, you know, phenomenal quarterbacks this, you know, all those years as well. It was certainly fun to be part of. Well,
and you go into a quarterback competition now where you've got Luke Doty, who is a high profile recruit who's been on campus, and then you've got a couple of new guys. You've got your transfer from St. Francis, and then a freshman who just walked on campus with his guitar. So, yeah, how do you handle that in your first quarterback competition? I know Lincoln taught you to say, well, it's not over till it's over, and not to name a starter till 6 days before the season opener. But aside from that, how do you handle the room? How do you handle reps and just figuring out who that guy is who can lead your offense?
Yeah, no doubt. I still remember my first year at Oklahoma, and you know, it was a week and a half out, and we had to name Collar the starter. And I remember Lincoln saying, "What do you think?" I think this number 1's pretty dang good. No, we're all about competition. I mean, that's a core value of ours is competition and everything that we do in this building and outside this building. And I'm excited about Luke. I mean, he's a guy that has all the right qualities. He's such a good athlete. He can run. I mean, watching and seeing what he's doing in the weight room already just this off season. He's a guy that has those natural leadership qualities and is a really talented quarterback and a great young man. So I'm excited to see what he can do. And then, you know, to get these other guys out there as well, the other guys in that competition, and get out there and compete and see where we are at that position. So it'll be a fun spring, and that quarterback position is no different than any of those other positions. We've got competition everywhere, and cannot wait to get out there next month and get to work with them.
Speaking of competition, it's competition in the coaching world. You guys are always trying to get to where you want to be, and this is for you, I imagine, a pinnacle situation, the first head coaching job, and you're in the SEC. But you said something when you did a really good Q&A with Josh Kendall, our beat writer here at The Athletic, and you said that there's kind of an edge to you, a chip on your shoulder, because you went into the business worried that people would think because Frank Beamer's your dad, that you would be handed things, and that's been kind of a driving force. What is that like in that? Because people will say, oh, well, that's how you get those jobs. But when you're actually in it and there's people around going, and you can look them in the eye and know they're saying, I think you're here because of that. How do you prove them wrong?
Just the work ethic and the mentality and how you go about each and every day. And I can't control what people think, but I go back to, high school or elementary school when my dad was the head coach at Murray State or Virginia Tech. And probably some people thought that the only reason I was the, starting left fielder on the Blacksburg High baseball team was because my dad was the head coach across town at Virginia Tech or whatever it might be. And it was really important for me when no disrespect to any son of a coach that has ever gone right into working for his dad, because it was a great experience for me. But it was really important to me when I got done playing at Virginia Tech in 1999. The last thing I wanted to do was just go be a GA for my dad and start coaching at Virginia Tech. I needed to get out and make my own name, try and develop a reputation of, Shane Beamer and not just Frank Beamer's son. But even then, like when I went to Georgia Tech in 2000 as a graduate assistant, I'm sure people thought the only reason at that time, you didn't have like all these analysts and quality control guys. You had
for noted easy guy to work for, George O'Leary.
Well, that's another story for another show. But at the time it was me and John Donovan that's at Washington, and then Jeff Collins. They were the GAs, and they created a GA spot for me to get my foot in the door. So I knew people thought the only reason he's getting that job is because his dad's the coach. And I'm not naive enough to think that if my dad hadn't coached with Ralph Friedgen at the Citadel and Murray State, that I would have gotten a job. I mean, obviously I had an in. Dave Brain was the athletic director at Florida Tech. He came from Virginia Tech. But it was important to me that once I got my foot in the door, that I would never let anybody ever say that the only reason I got that job was because of my last name. And you know this, once your last name may get your foot in the door, but you got to keep it there. I like to think that I wouldn't have been able to progress without that work ethic mentality. But I haven't lost that edge, and I hope I never, that as I sit here in this chair right now, that people are doubting me. And I'm a self-starter. I don't need people to motivate me to go do this job well. But that obviously adds a little bit of fuel to the fire, maybe thinking that and having that mentality.
Yeah. Well, there's another guy who actually kind of grew up around where you're sitting, Jeff Scott, who's the head coach at USF now. His dad, Brad, was the head coach of South Carolina. And he always felt that way too. And this is a guy who very early in his career took on a high school program that had just started in Blythewood, right near you, and won a state title almost right out of the gate. And I'm like, dude, don't you think at that point you're not worried about that anymore? He's like, no, you just never stop. It always is in the back of your mind.
No, there's no question. Always will be. And just whatever motivates you, I'll find that. And I think we got a lot of guys on this staff and on this team too, that hopefully have that mentality, a little chip on their shoulder and for that work ethic to prove people wrong and things like that as well. And to me, that's a lot like this football program is as a whole, and that blue collar mentality and I think probably more than anything, I'm just saying you never get complacent, and you're always working and always trying to grow and whatever it takes to do that, you do.
Well, and especially in the position you guys are now as a program where you're trying to bounce back, I would think that mentality, that type of player is the kind of player you need to get where you want to go in terms of building that culture you want. Yeah,
absolutely. You got to have those guys that have that. And, the guy hasn't played a snap for us, but Debo, our freshman transfer from Delaware. I mean, the first day he shows up on campus, it's like a voluntary week in the weight room. He doesn't have to be in there. And I walk into, my family's not here yet, and I'm a morning person anyway. So I walk in the building that day at 5:45 a.m. and he's already in the weight room getting a voluntary lift in on his first day. And
nice.
He hasn't changed at all. I think we got a lot of guys like that, they're tired of hearing about what they can't do and are eager to get out there and compete. And you certainly need those kind of guys in that building, in the building. I saw that firsthand with my dad at Virginia Tech and then different places that I've been as well, that those guys are certainly critical, going forward for you, that type of mentality.
South Carolina, good history with dudes named Debo. Now this one spells his name differently than
yes,
Debo Samuel.
One E and two E's. Yes, absolutely.
Good history. You also got a guy named Omega, which is awesome, from the same high school as Jadeveon Clowney and Stephon Gilmore, South Point and Rock Hill. So
I think he's going to end up being a great interview for you. I love telling this story. As I got hired and he called me, he was committed to us, and he FaceTimed me wanting to know if I was going to hire Joe Brady as my offensive coordinator.
Sure.
I said,
steal it from the Panthers.
That's a good idea. I don't know if it's going to happen. So then he flat out told Marcus Satterfield, when Marcus got the job, Marcus reached out to him, and Omega told him, he said, I really wanted us to hire Joe Brady, but I guess you'll do.
Oh, wow.
I like his honesty. I think
I like the stones on this dude. He's forget the alpha. He is the Omega. Omega Blake is this guy's name. So remember the name. And honestly, Ray Tanner might need to watch out, because Omega sounds like a future AD more than anything else.
That's right.
So, I mean, how exciting is this? That this is, you've got your team. You've been in this business a long time. This is your team. These are your guys. You get to see in about a month what they are. How exciting is that? Super.
Like I'm having so much fun. I mean, there's a lot that comes across my desk and a lot on my plate, but I mean, literally I'm living in a condo like 100 yards from this interview. So I really don't do much. My family's not here, but I'm so excited every day when I wake up to come into this facility and get to work and be around these guys. It's a great group of kids in the building. I love the staff we've been able to put together. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Like every day when I walk in my office and it says Shane Beamer, head football coach, and I look outside my window at Williams-Brice Stadium, it's like, are you kidding me? Like, how fortunate am I to be in this role? But like any coach, you want to eventually get out on the field and have a chance to work with the guys. And I can't wait. Like spring practice can't get here soon enough. Love what they're doing in the weight room. Love being around them in the building. But, I'm so eager to get out there on the field here next month. I'm really looking forward to that.
All right. It's a bunch of virtual visits till then, so we'll let you get your background back up. But Shane Beamer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to doing it again soon.